Hello everyone and welcome to this new episode in which we are going to explore Angular testing. Testing in Angular ensures the reliability, stability, and correctness of applications. It involves verifying individual components, services, and modules, as well as the overall integration of the application. Angular offers a robust testing framework and built-in tools to facilitate both unit testing and end-to-end testing. Unit testing involves testing small isolated pieces like functions or components, and end-to-end testing involves testing the complete application as a user interacts with it. Angular's testing ecosystem is built to ensure that components behave as expected, services provide correct outputs, interactions between parts of the application are error-free, and the application performs well under real-world conditions. There are three types of testing in Angular. So there is unit testing, focuses essentially on testing individual pieces like functions, components, or services in isolation or isolated environment. There are some tools to do unit tests like Jasmine, Karma, TestBed. TestBed is actually provided by Angular. And the second type is integration testing. Ensures that different parts of the application work well together, and it often overlaps with unit testing in Angular. And the third type is end-to-end testing, or E2E. It simulates user interactions to test the application as a whole. And there are some tools like Protractor, and Protractor actually is deprecated. Now there is Cypress and Playwright. In this video, we're going to use the Angular built-in testing tools like Jasmine, Karma, and Angular TestBed. So Jasmine is a behavior-driven development framework for testing JavaScript and comes pre-configured with Angular, and it has an easy syntax. Karma is a test runner for executing tests in multiple browsers. It provides feedback in real time during development, and it works well with CI/CD pipelines. Angular TestBed is a utility provided by Angular to create and configure a test environment for components and services, useful when testing component that depends on Angular's dependency injection. So in this video, we're going to be interested in creating a test file or adding tests to this component, which is a very basic component in which the user have to enter a to-do task or a task, and then click on submit to submit that task to Firebase. So it's very basic and very easy to test. So we're going to try to test this in this episode. To test this component, Angular creates a file that is called component name.component.spec.ts, which is located at the same location as the component files. So this file is actually used to generate, let's say, the component and create some test scenarios to make sure that the components behave as expected. We are going to start with a breakdown of the different components within the test file. So these two lines are responsible of initializing the test suite. So this is a component instance, and the fixture, which gives us access to the component instance and the templates. Then we'll have this block of code responsible of compiling and importing the necessary modules that the components need to run or to use, and then it compiles that for compare the components and its dependency for testing. Then we'll have to initialize those two variables that we have created here, the fixture and the component. After that, we call the detect changes to initialize the component and apply the bindings. Then this block of code is responsible of testing the behavior. So in this case, this block will verify that the component instance is successfully created, and we'll have a bunch of other tests like this to make sure that the component behave as expected. Before we begin testing, we need to understand or analyze the component that we are testing, which is the create component or to do create component, and check what are the dependencies of this component in terms of modules and services. So we have some modules that we need to import, and we have two services that we need to inject so that the component function as expected. So we need to mock this service and this service, and we need to import these modules into the test bed. And to do that, we will start first by instantiating two new variables for these two, let's say, services. And then we're going to import the modules here by just importing the modules that we need here. Then, of course, we will need more stuff to import here, so we're going to get to that later. So first, we will need to start by creating the two services that are going to be injected. So the first one will be the to-do service. So let's mark the to-do service here. And to do that, we're going to create a variable that is of type Jasmine spy object. So mark to do service of type Jasmine spy object, and it will spy on the test or to do service. This is the type of our variable, and then we will mark the bottom sheet. So mark bottom sheet or mat bottom sheet if you would. And to do that, we'll create another variable of the same type, mark bottom sheet reference, and this is actually of this type. So we're going just to spy on this type to mark it. And then it's Jasmine. So notice that we are using Jasmine here to prepare everything. Jasmine spy object of that type. And then we need to import this reference or mat bottom sheet reference. So that's it for the preparing the services to be marked. So now we are going to create the mark to do service and then create the mark bottom sheet reference. And to do that, we have to do it just before we compile the components. So we are going to create the mark or the mocks. So we first start by mark service, mark to do service is equal to Jasmine, again, create spy object of type, or we don't need to specify the type, but we know that it's to do service. Then one of the methods that this component needs from that service is actually the create. As you can see here, we need this create item that is inside the to-do service, so we need to create that method as well. So here we need to mark that method. So that's that, and then we're going to start creating the method. So we'll say mark service dot create item dot end. So we return the type that we'd like to return, and in this case we are just going to have a promise of empty object. So we are just going to resolve an empty object, if you would. So that's it. That's the mark of that method. Now we are going to create or initialize the mark for the bottom sheet reference, and this equals to Jasmine again dot create object or creates by object. Then we need to specify again mat, the name of it. So mat bottom sheet ref. And of course, one of the methods that we're going to use, if we can check the components, we will see that we have dismiss. This is the method that we're going to mark. And to mark a method, you just need to add it here, and then make sure that it's called later. So that's what we need actually. We just need to make sure that this method is called, and we don't need to mark it because it's just a method that there is no return type. Then after that, these are the marks are done. So now we are going to import what the component need as modules to function correctly so that we can perform the test. So now here we can do the same thing as if we are importing the like creating the components from scratch. So we need all this. So we'll probably start with the you actually don't need every module that you have there, but in reality you need to take them all and put them into the imports module if you want there. So that makes it so that your component at least or your test works as expected. But for me, I'm just going to take the one that I think that we should use. So I will take the reactive forms because we need to mark the reactive form and make sure that the let's say the validation works as expected. And then beside these modules, we are actually going to import more things, because the service here, the to-do service, needs some dependency as well, and we need to mark those dependencies. So it needs Firebase or Firestore. So we need to have the Firestore injected into the test bed here, or provided at least here, so that this service can be injected and can be used, because one of the dependencies of the service is actually Firestore, and we cannot really, either we mark Firestore or we inject the real Firestore, since we are not going to save any information. And to do that, you just head over to the app config. So you go to app config, and you will see all these provides. You will need them. So you will need the provide date, or provide native date adapter. So you need to provide into the provider table. So you need to import that as well. So you need that to run the component, because it contains the date or the date picker. Then we need the Firestore like injection. So we need to provide Firestore and provide the Firebase app and the initialized app. So these two need to be initialized, or need to be provided as well. So Firestore and the application creation, so that we have this service actually works as expected. So because one of the dependency of the service is actually the Firestore service. And that's it for the providers. And then of course we need to have those market, let's say, services to be added as providers as well. So to do that, we need to say provide to-do service, use value our mark. So we need to use the value our mark. Okay. Mark to-do service. This is going to be that. And then we need to provide the bottom sheet mark as well, the same way. So we need to provide that here. So we say bottom sheet reference, and use the mark service instead of the real service, or the market service, market reference instead of the real reference. So that's that. And then these are the provided things that the component relies on to run smoothly, because the dependency of the service need to be added as well. And in this case, we have some dependencies on the Firestore and the date, so we need to provide both of them here. And of course, we need to have the all the provided stuff from here as well. So you have the provide animation. So this is the component needs that provide animation function to function correctly, actually. So we need to provide that as well. Otherwise, the test will generate errors. So let's provide that as well. Now I think we are ready to run our test. To run the test, I think we are all good. So we make sure that the component creates correctly with all the dependencies that we have introduced already. So if everything is okay, we can start testing the different behavior. So right now we are just making sure that the test is working as expected and the component gets initialized. Then later on, we're going to add other assertion and our expectation from the component and test them all one by one. So to run the test, all you need to do is open your terminal at the application root and then say ng-test. Then Angular will start the test engine and test all the components that you have. So each component will have this specification file, and Angular will go through all the components and run each individual specification file by running the assertion that you have here. So let's try. So as you can see, Karma is open. It's the test executor or the test runner. So it opens in a new Chrome, let's say, instance, and you can see that all the tests worked as expected. So as you can see, the to-do component. So we have this, and you can see that should create works as expected. So now we are going to introduce more tests to see that the form is validated, and we can check whether if the submit works as expected, and when we submit, is it dismissing, let's say, the bottom sheet, and so on. So we need to test this behavior. So let's say when I finish, so this should be dismissed. So that's what we're going to test as well. So we're going to start testing each individual behavior one by one, and to do that, we will just head over to the test, and we keep this running. Whenever we add a new test, it will refresh here and show you the test. So just go back to the other list. So this is the list of all components that's being tested, and we can start adding more assertion or more expectation. And one of them would be to check if the component initialize the form with the default values. So the default values are actually, if I click here to add, so the default value is today's date, and the expected value for the default priority is high, and we don't have a title. So by default I don't have title. I need to test that behavior, and to do that we will just create another it. So verify the default values, the form's default values. So let's try that. So we should start with it, and then decide what we want, or say what we want to expect, or what is the expectation. Should initialize the form with default values. Then we have a function that is going to be the test, or what we expect, actually, same way we did for the other one. And then let's just arrow function. Then we're going to close this one here. Now here we are going to see the expectation. So we need to get the form, and to do that you just use the component instance, which is component. So let's say form is equal to component dot to do form. So we have an instance of the form from the component instance, and then we're going to expect the form to be defined first. So expect form to be defined. So we need the form to get initialized. So this is the first test, and the second test is that we want the title to be empty by default. So we say expect form dot get the title dot value to be, as you can see, the test is really like human. So you're actually talking while I'm actually talking while I'm typing the test. So it's the syntax of Jasmine is very, very human, let's say, and very easy to understand. So to be null or empty, and then we expect the date to be today's date, or maybe any date. So due date here to be Jasmine, any date in this case to be equal to a date object. I don't care about what day is today, and then I would say just to equal, and we are going to use Jasmine any of type date. So I'm expecting the date to be a date, and then I'm going to expect that the default priority is actually, so I'll take the priority from here. The default priority should be high. As you can see there, it's already the case, to be high. And yeah, so that's how we can perform the test. So this is perform expectation, and here we initialize the form. So get the form from component instance. As you can see, it's very basic and very simple to understand the test. So now we are going to run the test once again to see that if there are errors or if the test fails. So I'll just refresh this one here. And then it will run, and as you can see, my to-do create have two tests. So the first one is should initialize the form with default values, and the second one should create, and both of them worked as expected. So now if we want to make this test fail, so we can change this to medium instead, and we will see that it fails actually. So if we do that and just refresh here, as you can see, it fails because expected is high to be medium, so it's not possible. This is a failing test. And then we can say this one to be test by default, but in reality it's not, so we'll just say high here. And then the default value, since it's not test, it will fail again. So expect empty to be test, which is failing. So if you remove it, it will work as expected. As you can see, it's successful. And then here, if I say string, we will see that it fails once again because we are expecting a date, but it's actually expecting a string, but it actually gives a date. So we need to return it back to date so that it works as expected. So yeah, that's all for doing tests. So you just expect the behavior and then create an it function. The first parameter would be the description of what you are expecting the component to do, and inside that you'll have a function, and this function defines the expectation by doing different, let's say, expectation. Let's say for this, in this case, we are expecting the form to be defined, expecting the form title to be empty, expecting the due date to be a type date, and expecting the priority default value to be high. So as you can see, it's very, very simple. Now we're going to do another test, maybe to validate or make sure that the form is validated before we proceed. So to do that, we just create another it function. So verify that the form is validated. And then we start with it should validate the form. Fields correctly if you would. And then the second parameter would be an arrow function. Then here we are going to have the expectation that we'd like to have. So this it actually is not if. And then here we have closing parentheses. Then we are going to start by getting the instance once again of the to-do form. Then we try to expect different expectation from those controls within the form. So we would like to first get the different controls. That's going to be const title control. We're getting it from the form dot get title. Then same thing, the other two controls that we have. So the due date, choose the due date here. And then the priority, which is priority. So now we have access to the controls of the form. We're going to perform our expectation. So expectation here. So expect that the title control validity to be false. So now we are expecting that the default, let's say, title control to be false, or the default state to be false. So if we run the test, we can see that it still works. If we say to be true, let's say, we will see that it fails. So as you can see, it fails because it's not truthy. So it has to be false by default. Then we're going to expect, let's say, the set the value of the title control and see that the expectation to be true this time. So we need to validate the control, and the control should go give true instead. So the expectation will be valid, will be true. So set value, so of course can be null, so we can set value here, and then we set test title. That's that, and then we are going to expect that this to be true, not false this time. After running or after entering the information, we expect that this to be true, or that the title gets validated and it's valid right now. So it works as well. If we say that if we just say this, just remove that and try again, so it will fail. As you can see, it's false. So that's how you test, let's say, the form expected value. Then we are going to do the same thing for the other controls. So I will do that, and then I'll pause the video, then do all these, let's say, other scenarios, and come back to see the results. As you can see, I have added the other expectations, and the test still is okay. So everything works as expected. Now let's go ahead and do another test, and in this case we're going to expect that the create item and dismiss the button sheet on valid form submission. So we need to call these two methods. So this is what happened. So we need to call this when we submit. We need to validate that the component actually calls this method and calls this method. That's what we would like to test this time. So let's try. Okay, now to do that, we just need to have the form initial value. So we'll start by initializing it once again. So verify that the method create item and dismiss are called. So to do that, it should call the create item and the dismiss functions when we submit the form or on form submission. And then it's going to receive a function or a normal function. Then we're going to start building the adding the value to the form or the controls, adding the values to the controls of the form, and then test, let's say, the submission, try to submit and see if it calls those two methods or those two functions. So to start, we need to get again an instance of the form. Then we're going to set the value of the form. We need to set it manually, so form.set value. And then we're going to put the information as follow: title, to do, and then we have due date to be new date or date of today, then priority to be high. So this is it, and then we're going to simulate the submission. So let's get an instance of, get a reference to the button. Submit button, and to do that we just need to say const submit button is equal to, we're going to access the fixture or access the template from the fixture, and then we say debug element query by CSS. So we need to query by CSS. So this by needs to be imported as well, and CSS is button type submit. Button type submit. So this will give us access to the button, and we can perform a click action if you would. Perform a click action on the button reference. And to do that, you just say submit native element dot click. So this will simulate the click action, and then now we are going to expect. So await fixture dot when stable. So once everything is good, so this is going to be async. So we need to add the async decorator here. So this is async function. Then we're going to expect. So our expectation will happen here. Expectation. So the first expectation would be that the service gets called to have been called with form.value. So we're expecting the create method to be called with the form value, as if we were doing it here manually. So as you can see, I'm calling it through the value, so using the form value. So we need to expect that from the component. So the component should do that. And then we're going to expect that the dismiss method is called same way. So expect mock bottom sheet reference dot dismiss is actually called, to have been called. That's it. So there is no parameters to that. So now when I run the test, or when I save, so I expect that the test should go as expected, but I think there are errors. So let's see the error together. So I think it says like priority is not there. So I think I mistyped the priority. So I'll just copy this and paste it here. Now the test should run as expected, and we have 8 tests that succeeded. As you can see, should have been called, like should have called, or should call the methods create and dismiss functions on form submission. So this works as expected. And then if we would like to make it like falsy, we can just say called with value. Let's say if I say called with value, and then introduce any value here. So we'll see that the test fails because we didn't call with value. So it's not called with the value. So yeah, that's how we actually test components behavior, and we can do any kind of test. So we can test all kind of scenarios that the component will be used, and or how the component will be used. So it's very, very useful. So now when I make any breaking change to the component itself, so the test will warn me that I have a failing test. So let's say I will introduce medium here instead, and then save. So now we will have a failing test, meaning that I have made some changes and I need to be careful. So this can break, let's say, the application. So I need to make it back to high so that my application works as expected. So this is how we actually use the test in Angular, and it's very, very simple to configure and to play with. And you just need to import everything that the component needs and mock the services or the injected services to the component. Then you can start, after compiling that, you can start the expectation based on what you want the component to do, and test all kind of behavior that the component should behave in different circumstances. So that's it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell button, and leave a comment if you have any question, and see you soon.